Today's reading is Sands from the Sillypedia Wiki. Spoilers ahead! This article contains major spoilers about this silly person and/or their source material. Please proceed with caution. Repetition notice. This article contains almost word for word every part of the Sands article on the Sexypedia Wiki. Feel free to skip this video or watch the Sexypedia Sands video to avoid any repeated information. Sans is a protagonist from the video game Undertale, and a minor character in Deltarune. Though he's notoriously well known for being one of the most iconic Tumblr sexy men, even being one of the only 3 Apollyon-class sexy men, in terms of being a silly man, he has a lesser yet still incredibly popular status as one. His class is Keter, his aliases include Sans Undertale and Sansy, and his source is Undertale. Basic information. Sans is a skeleton, and the first character the player meets outside of the ruins. He has a brother, Papyrus, whose energetic and genuine personality contrasts Sans' lazy jokester personality. His role in Undertale's story depends on the route taken. In the game's neutral or pacifist routes, the player will never fight him, whereas in the game's genocide or no mercy route, Sans is the final significant boss. This battle is often considered the most difficult boss battle in the game. In this battle, Sans has a far more aggressive and involved attitude than in the rest of the game and reveals a surprising amount of raw combat power. The dramatic tension of the scene skyrocketed Sans into being the fan favorite, so much so that he eventually represented Undertale in Super Smash Bros. Ultimate as a Mii Gunner costume. More information can be found on the Undertale wiki. Archetypes. Fourth wall blurring. It's not certain how much he knows, but some mysterious clues near his house, his comments about the timelines, his powers, and his actions all make it clear that he has more awareness of what's going on than most. Enough that he states he's given up on a happy ending, because he knows the resets, which no one but Flowey and his ripple effect proof memory knows about, will only set everything back the way it was. Fans often run wild with this and write him as being ripple effect proof himself through a strong connection with W.D. Gaster, secret cutting-edge science knowledge that gave him unnatural powers, or both. The first chapter of Deltarune has also given rise to the theory that he's actually a traveler from the Deltarune dimension that has somehow become trapped in this world. It's also implied somewhat that his power may come from his greater fourth wall awareness, especially since most of his tricks rely on purposely breaking the rules of the battle interface and he seems to have some knowledge of the existence of the player. Artsy. As evident by the performance sheet in the MTT Resort and his overall demeanor, Sans is a comedian. He likes performing for people, and in a more meta sense, due to his acknowledgement of being a video game, he could technically be performing for you, the player. Further evidence is his tactile guilt-tripping in the genocide route, where he tries to get you to quit by showing you how much you're hurting these people. Chaos Lord. Sans is not above using his awareness of game mechanics and ability to exploit them to some extent, including teleportation through what he calls shortcuts, to play various tricks on the player and other characters, aided by a sharp sense of comedic timing and a penchant for skeleton-themed puns. As the designated comic relief of the game, he enjoys a bit of tuned physics to aid him in this endeavor, such as stacking a veritable tower of hot dogs on top of the player character's head. He may also give the player a series of humorous passwords across multiple playthroughs, what amounts to him as timelines. Controversial. While it's not wide within the fandom, there have been a rather unfortunate amount of people angered over Sans' popularity, to the point of bitter comments. Not only this, but he also has that unfortunate, so popular they get unpopular thing that extends past the fandom, though that could be reflective of Undertale as a whole. Creature. He is part of the monster race in Undertale. Distinctive speech patterns. Almost all of his dialogue is written in lowercase Comic Sans. Sometimes when he's trying to be scary, he switches to a sans serif font and uses actual abbreviation. Distinctive voice. Although Undertale uses voice grunting samples and no actual voice acting, Sans' deep tone is iconic and easily recognizable. In fanworks that do give him a voice, he usually has a deep, laid-back and mischievous voice. Even when he is angry, his wrath tends to be subtle and hidden behind a veneer of cheerfulness. Ensemble Dark Horse. All things considered, Sans doesn't really matter at all to the main plot of Undertale, which is about Flowey, Kara, and the Dreamer family drama above all else. The plot doesn't really involve him in any significant capacity, beyond him being the final boss of the genocide route. Retro. It's been well documented that Undertale was widely inspired by Earthbound in its art direction and game format, giving Sans a bit of that retro vibe with its lack of shading and more simplistic design compared to other games of the time. Perpetual Smiler. Sans is constantly smiling. It's unclear whether this is a choice on his part, or just because of how his skull is shaped. Quotable catchphrases. Like many Undertale characters, Sans has a plethora of quotable and humorous dialogue. In particular, he is known for the quotes "Do you want to have a bad time?", which utters just before his fight, and "Get dunked on", which appears on the screen after Sans betrays and kills the player if the player attempts to spare him during his fight. "You feel your sins crawling on your back", a piece of flavor text that shows up during his boss battle, is another quote commonly associated with him. Small. He is shown on overworld sprites to be the same height as Frisk, who was a child. Theme song. Sans has several theme songs. The most famous of his theme songs is Megalovania. It slaps so endlessly hard that so many remixes have been made of it that it's actually a meme to remix it. While strongly associated with Sans because it plays during his boss fight, it has been argued that it is more the player's theme, because in Toby Fox's past projects, it was associated with megalomaniacal villains. And in Sans' boss fight, he is not the megalomaniacal villain in this situation. You are. He's just trying to stop you. There is a playlist on YouTube of over 500 Megalovania remixes. A new official remix of Megalovania was also added to Super Smash Bros. Ultimate along with the Sans Gunner costume. The other song associated with Sans in Undertale is simply titled Sans, which plays in the overworld and areas where Sans can be found as well as places he likes to go, like Grillby's. This song also reflects Sans' laid-back, easygoing personality much more than Megalovania, which reflects the intense boss fight and the situation at the end of the No Mercy run much more than Sans himself. A more mellow version of Sans is It's Raining Somewhere Else, which plays in the hotel restaurant in front of the core, where Sans takes you to dinner, which reflects the more somber side of his character. There was also an unused song called Song That Might Play When You Fight Sans, presumably for a fight versus Sans in the pacifist route of the game, which never ended up in the final version. This song is also more upbeat and whimsical than Megalovania, and shares similarities with Papyrus's fight music, Bone Trousel. A parody of Stronger Than You, from the animated series Steven Universe, sung from Sans' perspective during the fight with him in the No Mercy run, is also commonly associated with him. It currently sits at 80 million views on YouTube, 21 million more than the original song was based off of. Since the parody popularity outgrew the original, there are a few people who don't even know it's a parody of a pre-existing song. It also sparked a trend of Stronger Than You parodies being written for other Undertale characters, with Frisk and Kara parodies also gaining a lot of popularity. Fanon tropes. Fanon splintering and self-shipping. Undertale had a lot of fan AUs, or alternate universes, with different versions of the Undertale characters, with different designs. The sheer amount of AUs is probably at least partially the result of Undertale's narrative playing with the idea of alternate timelines. With Sans being the most popular character, there's also an incredible amount of effort put into developing the different Sanses and their dynamics that you can't not be impressed. Flanderization. There are three main traits people flanderize with Sans: his laziness, sense of humor, and angst. People will hone in onto these with laser-focused intensity to the point that, in many fanworks, he's unrecognizable to his canon self and lacks any other characterization. Many people also commonly depict him as being addicted to drinking bottles of ketchup like alcohol when he's only seen drinking it once. Humanization. Going far back to ye olde times, Sans, as a human, was unfortunately commonly designed as a pale, white-haired, white-skinned, and rather skinny male, tending to go for a look that tried to recreate skeleton Sans rather than truly bring the character to the human realm. This trend, however, has recently died off. Fanon. Undertale gained massive popularity after it was released in September of 2015, and Sans was the most popular character among fans, so he had more fan art and dedicated AU characters than anyone else. There are many AUs for Undertale, most of which have alternate designs for the characters, but there are many who focus solely on Sans and sometimes their brother Papyrus. Down below is an attempt to make a list of the most popular Sanses here. However, there is a wiki with over more than 7,600 pages of different Undertale AUs. Undertale. Canon Sans. Usually depicted with a blue motif. Underfell. AU where the characters are more hostile and bitter than they are in canon. Designs have a lot more red and sharp edges, Sans being no exception. Notably, he has shark teeth and a gold tooth, and a red motif. Underswap. AU where several major characters swap roles and personalities. Sans is swapped with Papyrus, and it wears an armored outfit similar to canon Papyrus, with big blue irises and a very optimistic and outgoing personality. Meanwhile, Papyrus is depicted as the more chill and lazy guy who also smokes and knows more than he lets on. This stance is usually referred to as Blueberry by the fandom. Swap Fell, mishmash of the previous two, with an edgy bitterness being added onto a role swap. Basically a fall version of Underswap. Sans is depicted as a loud villainous bastard, delighting at violence. This Sans is often depicted with a purple motif. Fell Swap, also a mishmash of the second and third, with a role swap being added onto an edgy bitterness. Basically a swap version of Underfell. Similar to Swap Fell, Sans is depicted as a villainous character that likes violence. This Sans is usually drawn with a red motif. Horror Tale, angsty aftermath AU of the Queen Undyne neutral ending. Sans has a huge hole in his skull and one glowing red eye. He's very jaded and only cares about Papyrus. Due to the starvation, betrayal by people he trusted in cranial trauma, he has become a psychotic, often violent and sadistic skeleton. Reaper Tale, an AU where everyone is a Greek god/goddess. In this AU, Sans is the god of death, and is often shipped with Aftertale Sans. Aftertale, an AU where Sans uses determination to prevent his death when Frisk commits genocide and gets stuck in the save screen. Dreamtale, a slightly different AU where instead of taking place in the underground, the story is presumed to be on the surface. And there are two Sanses, one being the Guardian of Positivity and one being the Guardian of Negativity. Dream Sans, the Guardian of Positivity, is the protagonist of this AU. Nightmare Sans, the Guardian of Negativity, is the antagonist of this AU. Dream Sans has a mainly yellow outfit, and Nightmare Sans is dark and goopy and has a mainly black outfit. Dust Tale, an AU where Frisk repeatedly commits genocide until something is different, and Sans remembers every reset. Sans then kills all the characters to gain enough LV to have more determination than Frisk. Sans always uses his hood, and his clothes are stained with monster dust. Sans is schizophrenic and often hallucinates his brother, Papyrus, as a ghost with only a scarf, hands, and head, who encourages Sans to keep killing to stop Frisk from repeating the timeline again. Outer Tale, an AU where instead of the underground, it is set in space. The designs are space-inspired, usually utilizing star patterns, with a lot of yellow and blue. Sans has the same personality as Canon, but a different aesthetic. X-Tale, an AU where X-Gaster keeps overriding the timeline trying to create a perfect world until X-Kara goes insane. In this AU, X-Sans, often known as Cross Sans, and X-Kara share a soul. As of Underverse Season 2, Cross Sans wears monochromatic clothing and carries around two knives. Echotail Gaster Sans, a fusion between Sans and Gaster, taller and skinnier than normal Sans, with cracks above his right eye and below his left eye, and often drawn with more humanoid proportions. Aerotail Aero Sans, an Aftertail Sans that accidentally got stuck in the anti-void, went insane, and got corrupted. He destroys other AUs to fix glitches in the multiverse. This Sans is easily distinguishable by his black, blue, and red color palette, red eye sockets, and blue strings on his face that look like tears. He is often depicted with glitching effects. He can create portals to travel to AUs. Ink Sans, opposite to the previous Sans, a Sans that protects other AUs and encourages creators to make them. Ink Sans has an ink blot on his right cheek, wears a brown scarf, and often carries around a paintbrush that he calls Broomy. He doesn't have a soul, and therefore cannot feel emotions. He drinks paint to feel artificial emotions. He can also create portals to travel to AUs. Ink Sans comes from an unfinished and abandoned AU, which he escaped from by destroying his soul, and along with it, his emotions. Undertale's Something New, Killer Sans, a Sans from an AU where Kara offered to help him repeatedly commit genocide to feel something new. Killer Sans is insane, and probably has a personality disorder. Killer Sans has a target-shaped red soul, and black goop dripping out of his eyes. Fresh Sans, often referred to as just Fresh, this AU, along with Error Sans, is a prime example of an AU being created just for Sans. Its lore is that Fresh is a parasite, almost always depicted as possessing Sans. He's portrayed as fun, with a colorful design and a constant use of outdated 90s slang, but also angsty in regard to him being a parasite. This character was inspired off of Dippy Fresh.